No.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things that you might have missed in episode 6 of Andor. Guys, I think we just watched one of the most momentous events ever in the Star Wars galaxy, and that this episode has a direct link that sets up the events of Rogue One and A New Hope. How so? Well, up until now, the acts of rebellion against the Empire were very, very small. You had the people escaping on the Jedi path that we saw in Obi-Wan, and of course, Dedra has been tracking down small, random attacks across the galaxy that she believes are coordinated.
I'd spread it out. Never climb the same fence twice.
It's too random to be random.
But this is the first major attack of the rebels against the Empire. It's obvious, it's public, it's embarrassing, and it makes the news. Even senators are talking about it.
Big rebel attack last night. It's all the news.
This event is, well, you know what? I'll let Poe say it.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the
Empire
down.
But what's more impressive is how this show telegraphs this event with the visual metaphors of lights and fire. The first shot of the episode is Caf being poured into a cup by a fire. The liquid symbolizes community and life. They share this drink together, and the fire that sustains that life also keeps the people warm. The fire is also a metaphor for Nemik's hope and optimism, which even he admits that he's having trouble sustaining.
Struggling to understand why my faith doesn't calm me.
Later in the episode, the Aldani light fires to welcome the celestial event of the Eye. Then, as things start to go badly for the group, the fire is extinguished. But then, of course, the sky itself is lit on fire, aiding in their escape. And after Nemik dies, he passes his manifesto to Clem, like the metaphorical passing of the torch of the rebellion. So the episode begins with a literal fire and ends with these metaphorical embers of the rebellion being lit.
Now that is an interesting observation.
Thanks, man. High five.
Hey there, why are you always talking to that dog? He's really annoying and he's not the reason I come in here.
He's the manager. Doug, kick this guy out.
I can't. I am too sad. Ha! Loser.
Oh, it's okay, Doug. Doug, where are you going? All right, we'll find a way to fix this. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, let's go back to that conversation between Clem and Nemik. One thing this show does really well is it takes time out of its story to just let characters talk about their feelings. This heightens up the action and tension of the episode because we're much more worried about what happens to characters than we actually care about. Nemik is the true believer of the group, the warrior poet who believes that he's serving a greater good. But he's scared about this day, so his doubts start to creep in. He doesn't understand why he couldn't sleep because his faith in the cause should have given him comfort. He sees this in a contrast to Clem.
I mean, you have nothing. You sleep like a stone.
Now, Nemik then goes on to say that he's been writing about whether or not the rebellion needs true believers, or if they should hire cutthroat mercenaries, should they become more like the Empire. Now, what's happening here is that Nemik is actually questioning his own value, and Clem is happy to tell him exactly how the Empire values him.
They don't care enough to learn. You mean nothing to them.
To underscore this, we cut to a pair of Imperials who are also drinking caf, and they're talking smack about the natives.
They breed a sad combination of traits that make them particularly vulnerable to manipulation.
He goes on to explain how they keep the numbers down for the ceremony.
Then along the way, we've placed a series of comfort units. Shelters and taverns with cheap local beverages.
Now this is showing exactly how little they think of the natives and their customs. They see these people as such simple folk that they can be easily distracted by their traditions with simple pleasures, and that is how they control them. This is also very similar to how the British Empire controlled many of its colonies. It slowly subverted native customs until the natives were dressing and speaking like their oppressors.
What began as 500 pilgrims at the bottom has already dwindled down to, where are we now, Lieutenant?
We counted 60 last night, sir.
The Empire is slowly weaning the Aldani off of their own culture because this will make them easier to control. The Empire wants everybody registered under their own system, with every citizen being assigned a chain code, like we saw in the Bad Batch. And they are doing this by making religious events like the Eye seem antiquated and unimportant. We see this same tactic being used in the Galactic Senate, which I'm going to talk more about later. Hey Doug, are you still down about that guy being mean to you?
I have no authority anymore. I am so small.
Well, buddy, I have a way for you to get back your confidence.
Is it a banana?
Even better. I got you a certificate from Established Titles. They're the sponsor of this video.
But how can that help me?
Well, Established Titles helps you to purchase 1 square foot of land in Scotland, which makes you a Scottish landowner, and according to Scottish custom, that would allow you to have the title of Lord or Lady. Now, my own land is on a private nature reserve in Edelston, and my purchase helps to preserve their woodlands. But guys, this is not just a novelty gift. It actually helps protect the woodlands of Scotland. With every order, Established Titles plants trees all over the world through their charity partners One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. You get this certificate and an official crest and a unique plot number so you can see the exact location of your land. And then, Doug, you will be allowed to officially change your name to Lord or Lady, and you can even put this on your credit cards or plane tickets. It also makes for a really fun last-minute gift. I mean, just look at some of these reactions.
Lord Joe Green.
Yes! Lord Kenneth Delane Albert.
All right. Hey, look at that. You will be calling me Lord!
Established Titles is actually running a massive early Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code ScreenCrush, you get an additional 10% off. Established Titles even told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack with my link will effectively be next to my plot or like within walking distance. Depending on how many people want to be a lord or lady, we can have our own little ScreenCrush kingdom. So go to establishedtitles.com/ScreenCrush to get your gifts now and help support the channel. And Doug, maybe being a lord or lady will help you stand up to that bozo.
Let's do it.
Back to the Easter eggs. So then we see the Aldani approach the valley and notice that they all wear some kind of circular jewelry. This matches what we've seen of their culture. The circular fire pit, the circular temple, and the circular shape of the eye. The eye is the title of this episode and it has a few different meanings. Land Chris on Twitter points out that the traditional clothing of the Aldani is pretty reminiscent of the clothing of the descendants of the Incan people. The eye refers to the literal eye, the storm above, and the eye of a storm is the center of a hurricane where it is quiet.
Relax, can't you see how eerily calm it is?
In this case, the weird calm is at the Imperial base leading up to the heist, but that calm is also spread across the galaxy. The Empire thinks that it has the galaxy under its full control, but as Dedra is figuring out, there is Viene una tormenta.
There's a storm coming!
I sense there's a storm coming.
There's a storm coming!
Alice says there's a storm coming.
But eye can also mean a watchful eye, like the eye of Imperial surveillance. For the heist to work, the team has to disable communications, make the base go dark, and keep Imperials from watching them. And, as Qyburn says at the end of the episode, the eye of the Empire is now firmly fixed upon the rebellion. Now, that's all theme and character stuff, but there are also quite a few Easter eggs from previous Star Wars episodes. As always in Andor, these Easter eggs are all organic and don't feel forced. The code name of the crew,
Echo 1.
were later used by the rebellion on Hoth.
Echo base?
And the radio sound effects are very similar as well.
Field comm, it's a battle radio.
I've got something.
When the crew is marching out of the base, we find out that Tamarin was a stormtrooper.
But how? I thought stormtroopers were all clones.
Well, Doug, that's a common misconception. The stormtroopers were clones during the Clone Wars, but afterwards the Empire weaned regular human conscripts into their ranks, like we saw happen in the Bad Batch.
These are not clone troopers. That's what I've been trying to tell you. These are our replacements.
Another cool costume detail is that the garrison troops are outfitted much like the stormtroopers. Their chest plates are very similar, and with identical shoulder straps and very similar backs. Lieutenant Gorn, whose name has to be a reference to this species, so Gorn is using an Imperial communicator like the one we first saw 3PO use in A New Hope, and the sound it makes is very similar to the Republic comm signal used to execute Order 66. Now, this show has been making Star Wars history with every episode, with our first sex scene, kind of, our first heavy curse word,
shit,
our first cigarette, and now, our first wee-wee. So, the Commandant's being all pissy and nervous trying to impress the engineer from Coruscant. This guy is a lot like Pontius Pilate. He's the governor of a small province at the edge of an empire, and he's desperate to impress folks from the capital city. But, as we see, he struggles to maintain control of his own household.
You might feel the back of my hand.
5 minutes later.
Never get out of here.
And of course, this is a metaphor for how the Empire can't even control the native populations or the galaxy itself.
The more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
Or, as the native chief says,
Or I don't think that translation's right.
oh, sorry, that was the wrong translation. This one. Balin sent to travel underwater, giving off some Phantom Menace vibes, but it was actually a tactic used by Cal Kestis to break into an Imperial base in the game Fallen Order. And also, let's give a shout out to the music in this episode. Composer Nicholas Britell creates a tense theme that kept me on the edge of my seat, as it was more and more obvious that something really bad was going to go down. Now, in the base, the crew takes hostages at a banquet table, reminding us of this.
We would be honored if you would join us.
And I just want to comment real quick that I feel bad for this guy who was like so excited to serve his fancy space snacks and then got shot down. In the vault, the soldiers are playing Sabacc, the poker-like game that won Han the Millennium Falcon. Now these are the same guys that Gorn assigned to be here, so he knew that they were the type to be more lax and gamble during duty. So every good heist story has to have something go wrong, and in this case it's the communications jammer. So this mustachioid Imperial do-gooder takes a squad to the vault. Meanwhile, this is right when the flames are being extinguished and the base is going dark. Star Wars has never been subtle about its light and dark metaphors. There's the dark side of the Force, for instance, and The Force Awakens really overdid this metaphor with a lead character named Rey, like a ray of light, and two kinds of light on Kylo Ren's face as he's conflicted about what to do with Han Solo until the light of the sun is blacked out and he turns fully evil. Hell, even Poe says, "But as long as there's light, we got a chance." And in this episode, the extinguishing of lights marks the low point for the team. And when the eye begins, hope resurges. And I thought it was appropriate that the rebels use this ancient ceremonial event to undermine the control of the Empire. It shows that the old ways, the old traditions, are still more powerful than any galactic government.
Do not cite the deep magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
And the most beautiful moment of this entire episode, really of the season so far, was when the Imperials and the Aldani both just stop in awe to witness this celestial event. When we go to the airbase, they use the same location font and titles that we see in Rogue One, again tying this story more into that particular corner of the Star Wars universe. So it's always fun for me to see how the Imperial pilots actually enter TIE fighter cockpits, because for like years after the original trilogy, fans wondered how the heck they got in and out of the cockpits when they were so far off the ground. But I thought Moff Gideon's modified TIE in The Mandalorian answered this question brilliantly. So inside the TIE cockpits, we see how faithfully they recreated the TIE fighter interior from A New Hope, from the consoles to the targeting system sound effects. The ATG cast on Twitter pointed out that Nemik was not killed by enemy fire. He died literally from being crushed by Imperial money, the driving force behind the oppression that he writes about in his manifesto. That's a great observation. Afterwards, Vel gives him a med spike, which might remind you of this. But really, it reminded me more of the battle stems that the Nihil soldiers take in the High Republic novels, which are more like this. They needed Nemik to be awake because he's the one that uses the old analog navigation device that the Imperials can't track, which last week we pointed out is made from an old Polaroid camera. And as they're escaping, Nemik is shouting, "Climb!" Which is a callback to the most heartbreaking Star Wars death of all time. Climb! Climb!
You really mean that's the most heartbreaking Star Wars death? Even more heartbreaking than that little teddy bear who lost his teddy bear friend?
I said what I said. Now, the celestial event destroys the Imperial ships but leaves the heroes unscathed, and afterwards, Vel isn't sure if they should leave Nemik to die. Now, this question is really at the heart of the rebellion. What are they fighting for? Are they fighting for money to fund a war that would replace one cruel government with another, or are they fighting for the ideals of people like Nemik?
This kid is the reason that we are here.
Surprisingly, Andor makes the call to take him to a doctor, showing flashes of the idealism that will later drive him to be a key member of the Alliance. And then we get to my favorite scene in the episode, where Skeen offers to split everything with Clem.
We were born in the hole, and all we know is climbing over somebody else to get out.
Now this is a brilliant payoff to the conversation the two of them had last episode, where they saw the darkness inside one another. Now Andor thought that Skeen was a revolutionary who sought revenge for his brother. So when he asks about Skeen's brother and he says,
"I don't have a brother."
And we don't know what this means. We don't know if he never had a brother or if because his brother is dead, nothing really matters to him anymore. This is a great twist. Andor does not hesitate afterwards. He shoots Skeen because he knows that he can't trust him, and he knows that Skeen would likely kill Vel and take the money for himself. So he's brutal, just like he was to the injured spy in his opening scene of Rogue One.
We'll be all right.
The thing is, at this particular moment in the show, we don't know if he shot this guy to protect Vel or if he realized that he could just take all this money for himself.
It really is amazing writing.
Yes, it is. Oh, and Skeen also says,
"There's a moon 8 parsecs from here,"
which is a measurement of space that we heard Han Solo use to brag about the Millennium Falcon's navigation computer in A New Hope.
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
And here you can see a hay rake. Now these hook up to the back of a tractor to rake together hay that has been cut. You rake it into windrows, then to be baled.
How'd you know all that?
Colton Ogburn told me. So then Vel passes on Nemik's manifesto to Cassian.
Nemik's manifesto.
He said to give this to you.
Yeah, why did he want Cassian to have his journal?
Well, for a few reasons. One, if you're writing a manifesto, then it's no good if nobody reads it. And I think he sensed that Andor would be open to his ideals. Much like Padme and Luke, he saw that there was good in him. So then we get to the fallout from the heist. The ISB is clamping down with counter-offensives.
I want every star sector and planetary emergency retaliation plan in the building ready for presentation by midnight.
And something tells me that Dedra's conspiracy theories are going to become more and more important in staging these counterattacks. Now, then we go to the Galactic Senate, which is a shadow of its former self. Mon Mothma is giving a speech about the treatment of the people of Gorman.
This is a boot to the throats of all Gormans, who've done nothing more than request their basic rights.
And we heard her mention the treatment of these people a couple episodes ago.
We should find some Gorman guests for tonight and see how amused they are. Your fun friends just cut off their shipping lanes yesterday.
Now this is actually a brilliant Easter egg because it leads directly into how she left the Empire and formally led the rebellion. In the show Star Wars Rebels, the Empire commits atrocities on this planet, and Mon Mothma publicly criticizes Palpatine for them. So Palpatine labels her an enemy of the state, and the Ghost crew take her into hiding so she can lead the Rebel Alliance.
We're in the process of building an alliance, uniting the various rebel cells across the galaxy. My challenge to the Emperor was a call to stand against the Empire.
Now notice that there is now an Imperial logo on the front of each dais in the Senate, and she even calls for familiar response to Imperial atrocities.
There will be a fact-finding commission put in place this session.
A commission must be appointed.
But this scene actually shows how insignificant the Senate has become. In The Phantom Menace, the Senate was filled with Easter eggs, like E.T. for instance. But now the Senate is practically empty. People aren't interested in what she's saying. Now the first time we heard of the Senate was in A New Hope.
I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
Now this scene in Andor shows us why there was not a public outcry when the Senate was dissolved. The Senate had no power anymore. It was like the Duma under the Tsar. It gave the people a voice, but no actual power. So democracy in the galaxy wasn't killed, it withered on the vine.
So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause.
Then we go to the trusty antiquities of Luthen, where he's always willing to sell us an Easter egg or two. Last week I pointed out this Easter egg that I missed. These three carvings are identical to a portion of the Jedi Temple on Lothal that we saw in Rebels. So that mural depicted three Force users called the Brother, the Sister, and the Father, and these could be moved with the Force to open a portal in space-time to an area called the World Between Worlds, where time travel becomes possible. Another Easter egg I missed last week is right here. These stones just above Luthen are identical to the stones of Sankara that Indiana Jones recovers in the Temple of Doom. So in the back room we also see this armor, which was worn by Starkiller, Vader's apprentice in the non-canon games Force Unleashed. Another fun Easter egg are these necklaces, which at first I thought were worn by the Witches of Dathomir, but the style is much more reminiscent of your mom. And in the background here we see a Twi'lek Kalikori. That's a priceless family heirloom that explains a family's history.
It's a Kalikori, a revered Twi'lek heirloom, passed from parent to child through generations.
And finally, his aide is showing off an artifact that is...
It's a Devran blue.
And Devran was a planet that was the site of a Jedi temple that we first saw in the Clone Wars episode Rookies. But Savage Opress attacked this temple in the episode Monster. So Luthen describes the artifact as...
There's an inscription on that one, in the language no one remembers.
And this is probably because the males on that planet lived in the jungles for thousands of years, but the females became industrialized and explored space. This resulted in a female-led society that probably didn't preserve the customs and languages of the males on the planet. Luthen also says,
You decide what it says. Your own secret language.
Which is very interesting because of how it dovetails with Nemik's opening speech. Nemik wonders if the idealism of the rebellion can be sustained by idealists alone, and he wonders if it's important how history remembers their cause. But what Luthen is saying here is that if you don't win, or if your culture is defeated, then no one will remember you at all, which is basically what Cassian tells Nemik in the opening scene.
You mean nothing to them.
Oh, hey, what's going on there, ScreenCrush?
Hey, buddy, I thought we told you to get out of here.
Oh, no, person, it's okay. I use my new authority as a lord to pardon this idiot for his crimes. Now we play Catan together. Yeah, best buds.
Aw, that's nice of you. So I guess you can stay.
Thanks. Now, do you have a copy of...
Ooh, sorry, but we're closing for the day. But hey there, if you have any other Easter eggs you want to point out, let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.